Well, good morning, and to our friends joining us abroad, good evening. Welcome to Mirage Talks. Today, we welcome a very dear friend to the Mirage Institute, founder of our IRG Investors Research Group and co-chair of the Southern California Israeli Chamber of Commerce, Jacob Segal. Thank you so much, Jacob, for joining us today and arranging this wonderful panel.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Christy, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and shalom. Thank you all for joining us for another Southern California Israel Chamber Mirage Talk. Like Christy said, my name is Jacob Segal. I am a Southern California Israel Chamber Executive Board member, and Southern California Israel Chamber is a nonprofit, non-governmental, non-political, at this point, virtual platform. And our mission is to encourage, facilitate, and promote business, trade, innovation, exchanges between Southern California and Israel. Today's agenda, I will introduce first Ambassador Dr. Hillel Newman to say his welcoming remarks. Then I'll give a quick brief about the Israeli startups. And then I'll introduce our guest, Jerry Sanders, and then we'll open for questions and answers. That's pretty much agenda. And let me start with introducing the Ambassador, Dr. Hillel Newman. Ambassador Newman assumed the post of Consul General of Israel to the Pacific Southwest region in July 2019. Dr. Newman has over 20 years of diplomatic service for the State of Israel. He served as Israel ambassador to Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, both Muslim countries. Dr. Newman holds a PhD in Jewish history and served as a professor at Bar-Ilan University. Thank you again, Consul General, for joining us this morning, and we look forward to your remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob. First of all, it's my honor and pleasure to join this wonderful activity organized by the Southern California Israel Chamber of Commerce, which does such fantastic work to promote ties, trade, commercial relations between Israel and Southern California. So I thank you, Jacob, for your tireless efforts in that regard. Secondly, it's also a privilege to be a partner or appearing on a platform, which is also with the Mirage Institute. We follow, of course, very closely the activity of the Mirage Institute and support it in any way we can. Wonderful work done by the Mirage. And we just recently, we also publicized and distributed the information about the competition that they organized. Wonderful work, and we feel proud to be a part in your work. And of course, I'm privileged to share a platform with Jerry Sanders. Thank you very much. Just a few brief opening words. And I promise not about Jewish history. You mentioned that I have a PhD in Jewish history, so I'm not going to go into that, I promise. Just a few words. You know, the world is changing. If you look at the top 10, 15 companies a decade ago, and you look at the top 10, 15 companies today, you'll see a tremendous transition in what is leading the economy of the global market today. And if in the past it was natural resources like gas companies and oil refineries and that kind of stuff, today we're talking about a different world, a different leadership of the world, where you find software companies and those type of initiatives that are leading the world economy. This is all connected, of course, to artificial intelligence and innovation. COVID-19 has actually accelerated this trend, which began even before COVID-19, but the trend has been accelerated dramatically towards the king of the future, which is artificial intelligence. I'm glad to say that Israel is a pioneer and a leader in artificial intelligence and innovation. Not because we chose, but because we didn't have natural resources. We were in an environment which is surrounded by enemies at the time that did have these natural resources. So we had to innovate. And with our innovation, we became a pioneer and a leader in this field. And we're actually lucky that the wave of the future is going in that direction. So that's why we find all of a sudden that Arab countries like UAE and Bahrain are seeking the closeness of Israel and normalizing their ties in the Abraham Accords with Israel. We're opening up new markets with the Persian Gulf and with other sections. Lastly, I'd just like to say that just this morning, a report has come out on the Israel-California relations, which is going to become public soon, and it shows tremendous achievements, significant relations that are taking place, especially in the fields of innovation and modern technology. So perhaps I'd just like to suggest to the Mirage Institute and Jacob Segal that we do an event in the future around this report, which I think will be of great interest to all those participating. Thank you for inviting me, and tremendous success to the speakers and to this event today. My privilege to take part in it. Thank you.
Thank you again, Consul General. You've always been a supporter of our activities. And again, thank you very much. To follow up on the comments of the Consul General, just a few notes. For the first 9 months of 2021, Israeli startup raised close to $18 billion. And this is in a year that Israel was attacked with bombs and rockets and Corona. And only in the last quarter of this year, Israel raised about $5 billion. And this to tell you the strength of the Israeli economy. And I chose to show you some of the highlights, some of the funding that has been done in the past few months. Israeli fintech company, Pagaya, via merger with a SPAC, which is a special purpose acquisition company, is looking to go public at a valuation of $9 billion. Deal, another company in the Israeli fintech and payroll solutions actually, is looking to an IPO around $5.5 billion. Delta Galil, which is an Israeli manufacturing clothing company, is looking for a $2 billion IPO. Arbe Robotics, which went public last week at a valuation of about $550 million valuation. Orca, which is a well-known Israeli cybersecurity startup, just raised about $550 million at a $1 billion valuation. And I have a couple more, like Neuroblade, that raised just recently $83 million, and Aquant, an artificial intelligence company, like Consul General mentioned, raised about $170 million. Not to mention the fact that Microsoft just increased they're looking to hire another 2,500 people in Israel. So they will move from about 2,000 people to about 4,500 people in Israel. Also like to bring to your attention a new collaboration. It's called Ion Labs, which is a collaboration between the Israeli Biotech Fund and pharma company like Merck, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Amazon. And they're looking for startups and artificial intelligence that are looking for technology for personalized drugs and personalized treatment. And like the Consul General, I like to commend the Mirage Institute, Paul Mirage, the Mirage team, Christy, Ishai, for two great projects, one being the Mosaic project, in which in collaboration with the US Department of Defense, they're looking for technologies, and autonomous robotics, they work in buildings and they provide scholarship and thousands of dollars. And also the Desert Tech project, in which basically we're trying to leverage all kind of assets based in Negev. So this is a quick preview. Now I'm going to the man of the hour, our friend Jerry Sanders. Jerry, I'm going to embarrass you. I'm going to read the whole Megillah, your whole resume. So stay with me, okay? Our speaker for today, Jerry Sanders, is a former Israeli Navy SEAL. He served as General Counsel to Israel Ministry of Defense mission to United States, and is the founder of San Francisco Science, a technology development group. Sanders served as counsel to the Paris Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Globalization and Technology Development. Sanders was chairman and CEO of Skytrain, a NASA Space Act company. Presently, Sanders serves as an advisor to several startups initiatives, including an Italian winery, sustainable metal-free European tanneries, and medical device companies. Sanders is a member of the New York and California Bar Association and holds postgraduate degrees, a certificate in German socioeconomics from the Goethe Institute in Germany, and comparative constitutional law from the National Autonomous University of Mexico. He is also an associate fellow at Oxford University And he is the subject of a popular Harvard business case. Guess what? It's called the Jerry Sanders case. That's how we hooked up. And here's a short history of some of the Jerry's entrepreneurial career. Sanders was an advisor and founding Group AV that was sold to Medtronic. Founder and CEO of BAF, sold to Boston Scientific. Founder and CEO of Arteria, sold to Gore. Founder and CEO of Excardia, sold to Imagine. Founder and CEO of S3, sold to Tyco. Special counsel and financial bipolar, a special counsel and financial advisor to Clickstream, sold to Microsoft. Special counsel and financial advisor to Hemagen bipolar scissors, sold to Ethicon. Also to mention that Jerry is a honorary consul of the Republic of Haiti, and he was instrumental in the help that California sent to Haiti after the earthquake. Among Jerry's endeavors is winemaking. And Jerry is the founder of Shana Vista Vineyards, a California certified organic farmer boutique that produces award-winning Chardonnay and Malbec wines. Jerry, bavakasha, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for that glorious introduction, even if I wrote it myself. And thank you for the Mirage Institute for inviting me. And thank you all for attending. It's a real honor to address this prestigious group. And I sincerely hope my presence here does not diminish its luster. When the organizers invited me to address you, I asked, why me? I was expecting them to say because everyone else was taken. But no, they seem to believe that I have something meaningful to impart. And so I will try to not disappoint them. But if I do, please take it up with them. So as I begin, please consider this short list. New York City taxicab driver, garment district factory manager, Wall Street lawyer, and Chicago hotel executive. Admittedly, this is rather an eclectic list, and yet there is a common denominator. What is it? These are all jobs I was fired from. Why was I fired? Because I can't take authority. What did I learn from these experiences? That I should be, in fact, have no choice but to be working for myself. And this talk is mostly about that, what working for myself meant to me and what it continues to mean for me. During this brief talk, about 15 minutes, I'll make 7 points that I hope stay with you for a while. The first one, the one I am addressing now, is know thyself. For example, for me, the revelation that I should not be in someone else's employ did not come easily or organically. Rather, it came from my erstwhile Hyatt Hotels employer, Jay Pritzker. One fine day, Jay called me into his office to what I thought was going to be a commendation for the fact that I completed more than twice the number of deals in a year than any other executive at the firm. So it was a big surprise that, as it turned out, I was there to be admonished and then fired for causing friction within the organization. Jay patiently explained that smooth sailing was more important to that quintessentially Midwestern hotel chain than fast but choppy sailing. Yet in the same breath that Jay fired me, he also proposed that I continue to work for him, but outside of the organization. You know how to make things happen, he said. It's just that no one likes to be upstaged by you. Basically, Jay said, nobody here likes you. And then came the reveal. You're not an organization man, Jerry. You're an entrepreneur. Bam. That was like the scene from The Ugly Duckling. I'm not a duck, I quacked in my mind. I'm a swan, entrepreneur. When all else fails, rely on yourself. With Pritzker's blessing and support, I was off to my new career, a career in which I didn't have to take orders from anyone, a career in which I could do things the way I wanted them done, and a career in which success and failure were solely up to me, or so I thought, and more on that later. But now my second illumination. No man is an island, and no entrepreneur is a continent. Living in California back then in the prehistoric times, that is to say pre-Google, pre-Facebook, pre-Twitter times, when the talk of the town was still the size of your floppy disk, interesting ideas were like so many balloons in the air. Grab one, grab two, do with them what you will. So it didn't take long for me to meet a physician who had what I believed to be an interesting idea, one that I thought that I could finance from my many physician friends. Thus, without any scientific or medical knowledge, with virtually no experience of starting and running my own company, I launched my first startup. I won't rehash all the details of this adventure, and it was an adventure. If you're interested, you can read about many of them in the Harvard Business School case study bearing my name that Jacob mentioned. Suffice it to say that what I said before, remember, about a career in which success and failure were solely up to me? Yeah, well, that didn't happen. Admittedly, much of the success and failure were up to me, but it would be quite a stretch to the point of rupture, to say that all the success and all the failure, or even most of the success and failure, were up to me. At some pain and cost, what I learned over the course of my career is that no matter who you are, or where you work, or what you do, as Bob Dylan famously sings, it may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. No matter how hard I worked, it was ultimately the engineers, the regulatory teams, the designers, the clinicians who were going to decide our progress. At best, my ambition moved things at the margin. Investors had to be courted on almost a daily basis, and with apologies to Beckett, awaiting replies from the big companies regarding possible M&A or from VCs regarding funding was more frustrating than waiting for Godot. Yes, the satisfaction of making most of the strategic decisions myself was immense, but equally immense was the challenge of being nice to so many people and giving the appearance of one who really wanted their input. What I painstakingly came to learn is that a one-man band is a rarity. On a good day, his or her best day, the entrepreneur is more like the conductor of a Count Basie orchestra than like a soloist at Carnegie Hall. VCs like to say, it's not the horse, it's the jockey. I like to say, it's the horse, it's the jockey, it's the stable crew, it's the stables themselves, it's the conditions of the track. What I also like to say is that whoever the jockey is, he or she better be politically correct, emotionally sensitive, a compelling communicator with patience to spare. In short, when all else fails, communicate and collaborate. What else did I learn? Point number 3, that entrepreneurs lie. A lot, even more than the random business executive. Sometimes they pretend to not even know they're lying. And sometimes they just don't care that they're lying. And trust me on this, I know a thing or two about lying. In fact, for several years, while working undercover for an employer who shall remain unnamed, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, my very existence relied on lying all day, every day. Yet I believed at the time that my lying was for a good, important national security cause, not for my own aggrandizement, and certainly not for my own enrichment. But lying in a startup, where transparency and trust should be the coins of the realm, well, yeah. The high-pressure nature of the startup environment, in which products and services are often rushed to market before they are ready, where cash is tight, and where you're always chasing after that next investment, are all fertile grounds for chicanery. When fake it till you make it is a phrase that Silicon Valley embraces with a perverse sense of pride, what you eventually wind up with alongside game-changing startups is Elizabeth Holmes. Granted, Holmes is on the far extreme of that spectrum. But here's the thing. Once you start lying, you can't stop. After all, if a lie is to fly, it needs to comply with what follows it, and the entire team must embrace it. So you fabricate a bit here and a bit there, and then to investor number 1, 2, or 20, and soon you're lying all day, every day, and to everyone, and you're not even a secret agent. The Silicon Valley fake it credo begins on the far right side of the graph with advertising puffery. You know, best thing since sliced bread type statements. Everyone hears it, no one really believes it or relies on it. On the far left of the line, however, you wind up with someone defrauding investors by touting a device that, according to most reports, doesn't do what they say it does, as fast as they say it does, at the cost they say it will, because the device doesn't exist. The ripple effect from lies damages the entire startup ecosystem and hurts what often is an innocent team. Theranos's employees, scientists, executives will be viewed by potential employers with at best a jaundiced eye when applying for their next job. The unspoken argument in the air will be, if you did not know that this was a fraud, you must be stupid. And if you did know, well, you were simply part of the charade. And so goes the baby with the bathwater. The tired startup adage is that investors love entrepreneurs with failures. Well, yes, maybe, but investors are much less keen on failed engineers and executives. So buyer beware, investor beware, employee beware. In short, pay attention to your 5 senses, not your heart. It's the old, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? In short, when all else fails, no, actually before all else fails, tell the truth. Okay, moving on. Point number 4, budgets. Can we talk about budgets? Anyone who has been living on Earth or who has renovated a bathroom or 2 knows that every project costs 2 or 3 times the initial estimate. And that's how I budget. I take the most conservative estimate and triple it, because budgeting only has one rule: don't go over budget. Here's what else I do. I take the overall estimate and chop it up into the smallest possible bite-sized components. Almost anyone can make a good estimate on the cost of one semiconductor. Not that many can do so for an entire motherboard. And almost no one can get it right for a cloud computing bank of servers. So keep it small, double it or triple it, and get a good night's sleep. Remember, while a good budget will tell you what you cannot afford, it won't keep you from buying it. When you see entrepreneurs walking around in polo shirts emblazoned with their company's logo, run for the hills. When all else fails, at least, the very least you can do is stay on budget. Point number 5, no one pays attention. True story. Here I am, a young corporate finance lawyer in a big Wall Street firm. I'm in a huge conference room spanning half the entire floor of our 1 Battery Park building, within which is a picture book mahogany table surrounded by 24 chairs. In front of each chair is the ever-present yellow legal pad and a black cross pen. Our client, the now defunct Lehman Brothers, was presenting to its client, a West African nation, the ins and outs of a complex multinational sovereign bond document with permutations of interest rate swaps, forced redemptions, and sinking funds. Seated around the table were that country's finance minister, its deputy prime minister, and a whole host of World Bank economists. The Lehman Brothers partner was droning on and on about the many benefits of the financial instrument he was selling, using graphs and pie charts, all drawn by highly paid graphic artists. This is, after all, pre-Microsoft's PowerPoint revolution. Finally, the presentation concluded. The Lehman Brothers partner took a breath, stood back from the easel, and said, "Are there any questions?" At that point, the dapper finance minister pushed his chair back from the imposing black table, stood up, buttoned his jacket, smoothed his tie, and holding up the cross pen asked, "So we keep pen?" The point of my story, you must assume that people are not paying attention to what you are saying. And even when they do pay attention, chances are they are not understanding what it is that you intended for them to understand. So be brief, be clear, always assume you're speaking to 3-year-olds with the attention span of 2-year-olds. And even then, hope for the best. In short, when all else fails, fall back on Barney the dinosaur language. The next to last point I wish to make, number 6, is this: take the money, always take the money. Don't assume you need less, you need more. Don't assume you can get more because you will get less. You must be strong, you must be swift. And to attain both of those, you must be well financed. Because to quote Damon Runyon, the race is not always to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, but that's the way to bet. Now, finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, the last point, point number 7. Point number 7 is always have 7 points. 5 points are too few. It seems like you weren't really trying. 10 is derivative. 7 is the perfect number. Consider these 7s: Ronaldo, George Best, Beckham, Mickey Mantle, John Elway. You just can't beat a 7. So that's it for me. And now back to you. Comments and questions, please.
I work very hard to get Jerry to talk to us. So I want you guys to ask some questions. Please, don't be shy.
On any topic.
Jerry, I just went through about 7, 8 of your startups. Is any of them that kind of you can get a little bit more in depth and say which one do you consider some of the best experience, less of an experience or something like that? What do you learn? The reason I'm saying this, that I was involved in a startup, and my lesson from that experience, well, I wasn't a few, but sometimes you can deal with a bad economy, you can plan for a bad economy, but if you have a CEO that don't get it, and it's not trainable, not coachable, that startup doesn't, predict a good future. I'd like to get your comment on that.
Well, I think the most fun one was one of the first where I wasn't a principal, I was an advisor to the investor group, and that was AVE, Arterial Vascular Engineering, because that company came out with a stent right after Johnson & Johnson's stent. Johnson & Johnson had a stent called Palmaz Schatz. The stent, by the way, is a scaffolding that opens the blood vessel and in theory delays or completely defers the necessity to have open heart surgery. So at the time, Johnson & Johnson's stent was the only one in the market and was selling for in excess of $2,000 a stent. And we came out with our stent, which was also basically a Russian invention. And within 3 months, Johnson & Johnson went from 99% of the market down to 5% of the market. So that was a very gratifying experience. A less gratifying experience, which I can't talk about directly because I'm on a non-defamation agreement, but it has to do with lying, where I was CEO of a company and the engineers lied to me morning, noon, and night. And it was a horrible experience because, as I said, these folks lie, not necessarily because they intend to lie, but because they're embarrassed perhaps that they didn't do what they said they were going to do, or they're behind the curve. But it's really important to keep all 5 of your senses alert, and hopefully you have a 6th sense to help you as well. It can happen to a CEO, it can happen to an employee. You got to be alert.
Christy, you want to read the questions that you got in the chat?
Absolutely. Actually, we just got one in. How do you choose your team? is his question.
Yep. So I work with ad hoc teams, and I build the team based on the technology that is in front of me or in front of myself and my colleagues. And we seek out the leaders, the market leaders in the team, whether it's professors or physicians, engineers. We try and go to the best. And what we find is that the best usually are not employed by one employer. Rather, they prefer to do a lot of ad hoc stuff because they have curious minds and they're intellectuals and like to go from one thing to another. So we're fortunate to build the team specifically for the company and not have to have a team in place that may not be suitable for the technology before us. I can't hear. If someone's talking there, I can't hear.
Somebody
We have
wants to ask it.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have another one. What is your advice on dealing with FDA issues?
Well, it's a very sad state of affairs right now. It used to be that the pathway forward was to go to the European community first and get what was called the CE mark, which is the equivalent of an FDA approval, because it was much easier to do. And then you were able to sell your device in the European community and you could use the data collected to get FDA approval. Just recently, the European community has really cracked down on that practice, and now it is very difficult to get European approval for medical devices and the like. And consequently, you have to go to the FDA and, you just try and be as transparent as possible and build the trust of your reviewers so they know that they can rely on what it is you're saying. Nothing more than that.
Hey Gerald, this is Nahum here. Thank you for the talk. One question for mine. You spoke about the difference between the dream product and the reality, and that's something we all face. And there is always some difference. Gerald, are you still there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask you in that manner, when is the right time for commercialization? I mean, you can continue with the product, having more and more clinical trials and more validation even after it is approved. But when do you think is the right time to launch the product, even if that's approved?
Well, I mean, I would launch it as soon as it's ready. I mean, if you have, I don't know if we're talking about a medical product or some other product.
Medical product.
Yeah, as soon as you have approval, I would launch it. You may launch it in a beta site or in a smaller market and try and prove that there is a market for it. But I wouldn't hesitate because, you're competing with other people you don't even know about who are probably working on the same thing you're working on if it is a problem in the market that people need a solution for. So you want to be out there and try and preempt the competition. And you need to build revenue because today the medical device companies, the big medical device companies, they don't want to develop anything. They basically want to buy a finished product that generates revenue. And then they're willing to pay huge multiples. So that's the objective. I would commercialize as soon as you can.
Yeah, but sometimes, I'm sorry to push you, but sometimes the product is not, it's not that it's not ready, but it's not perfect. And you don't want to burn the market. You don't want to, you want to improve it internally as much as possible. So that's the dilemma, because once you launch it, then your control on the product or on the market acceptance is not 100% controlled by you.
Yeah, look, it's never going to be perfect, right? I mean, there is no perfect product. Everything has deficiencies. And if you wait for perfection, you'll never get out of that cycle because you'll always think of something else that can be made well. If you launch it in a small market, let's say for Israel, let's say you launch it only in Israel and you take Israel as your beta site and you get the feedback and improve the product, it's customary for products to come out with, the second generation and third generation and so forth. So long as your product isn't killing anyone and it's doing what it's supposed to do, it's perfect.
And last,
It can always be better, right?
Yeah.
Show me any product and I'll show you it can be better.
that's for sure, but and that's my last comment. So until you really launch the product, you can sell the dream, or what is your wishful thinking of the product, and eventually a product that will be launched by a small company would act differently in the market compared to the same product that was acquired by a large company and then commercialized, and sometimes the difference between the actual revenues can kill the product. Don't you think so?
Yeah, that's why I try and sell whatever product I have as soon as possible. I
Not
don't
in the
want
market,
to be
the company.
Yeah, the company, because I want to try to sell the company, because a single device company is doomed to failure. You can't compete today with one device because the hospitals and the doctors buy from the selling groups. These are groups that conglomerate a whole host of products together, and it's one-stop shopping. If you have only one device, you can't sell it. I can tell you anecdotally, there are doctors in Las Vegas who do more hip and knee replacements than anybody in the world. They cannot choose the hip or the knee that they want to use because the hospital buys from a buying group, a selling group, and the hospital dictates to the surgeon what that surgeon is going to use. Consequently, it's not the best device that wins out. It's the device that has the strongest marketing power behind it. The dilemma you face is, how do you sell it to a big company without revenue? Because the big company is going to want to see that you're generating some revenue. That's why I recommend starting a beta site like Israel. I mean, Israel is the quintessential beta site. It's, sophisticated doctors, sophisticated hospitals. They're always looking for new stuff. So it's a great place to launch a new product, even if it's not perfect. I can tell you, even if your product were perfect, Israeli doctors would find problems with it. And so they're going to make it better for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Jerry, what years were you at the Shaw Group in New York?
Well, Shaw was in San Francisco, actually, and I was with Shaw from 1990, I think, from 1990 to 1993, 92 or 93.
Yeah, okay, that's before, because I remember I tried once to work with somebody from the Shaw Group, but I don't remember it was in New York or San Francisco. I thought it was in New York, so, yeah.
Well, Dr. Shaw was an incredible mind. He was a brilliant cardiac surgeon and inventor, and he knew everything about finance and law, and one couldn't have hoped for a better mentor than Dr. Shaw. It was really incredible.
Yeah.
By the way, which is why a lot of people hated him. Because lawyers and venture capitalists would come into his office and he would strip them naked with his questions.
Yeah. How important would you say is the 5 years that you spent in the Israeli Navy SEAL in the Shayat Shlosha? How important would you say to your own development, to who you are today? I heard some of this, but I wanted to hear it from you.
It takes you to a different level as a responsible person and as a human being. When your life depends on whether you properly checked your equipment, you kind of have a different attitude towards responsibility. So it's a growing up tool. It's a great tool to grow up with. But by the way, I have a friend, Gadi Sukenik, who was in the Navy with me, and he was a news anchor in Israel for many years. And I think he and I both, and I know other people, we don't share the point of view that everyone should go to the military, and that if you do go to the military, you should necessarily be in a combat unit. It's important that people break that mindset of having to do something that they may or may not be suited for. I think people should go and do what they're suited for, and they'll have a much better experience. I was not suited to be a Navy SEAL, I'll tell you that up front. I have 2 left hands, and it cost me, my life to get through the training.
Chris, do you have any more questions?
No, before we close, I just, want to maybe open up one more. Actually, let's see if we have any more. Anyway, just want to give people one more opportunity before we close. All right. Well, on that note, number one, Jacob, thank you so much for your time today and helping put this together. And Ellie, thank you as always for your amazing leadership in the Mirage Talks. And Gerald, your talk was absolutely very impressive, enlightening to our Mirage tribe, and we really, really appreciate you taking the time on behalf of Paul Mirage. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and please share my email address with people who attended, so that if they have any questions or seek advice or anything else, I reply to every email I get.
Thank you very much. Will do.
I'll just also say thank you to all people that participated. Again, thank you again, Jerry, for sharing this afternoon, evening with us. And definitely we look forward to have a beer or a Shana wine here in Los Angeles. Ron and I will take you out.
Super.
Thank you, everybody. And if the Consul General is still there, thank you again, Consul General, for always being willing to join us in this events. Thank you again. Thank you again, Mirage Foundation, Christy. Thank you again. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.